reciprocals of a fraction or a mixed number. I'm going to talk about finding the reciprocal. I'm going to give you a few examples and then we'll find some reciprocals. For instance, not just regular fractions, numerators or denominators, which are the easiest ones to find reciprocals for, but sometimes the confusion lies when you have to find the reciprocal of a whole number or a mixed number. And then what happens if the numbers are negative? All right, so let's take a look at this. So the basic concept of reciprocals is if you have a numerator and you're dividing by a denominator, then the reciprocal of this is the swapping of the numerator and denominator. So if I gave you a real case, so let's say 7 over 3, and you wanted to find the reciprocal of 7 over 3, you would have just swapped the numerators and denominators, and you would have received 3 over 7. The idea behind this is that we want a reciprocal so that the original fraction multiplied by the reciprocal, so if you multiply the two, equals to 1. That's kind of the idea behind this whole reciprocal idea. So how do we find these reciprocals? Well, so as you can see, it's rather simple if it's a fraction in the numerator or denominator form. But what if you run into some other examples which are not necessarily in that form? So for instance, first, if you have a negative, and it doesn't matter what the fraction might be, so let's say you have negative 1 over 2. Now you can write the negative, I guess, with a negative right in front, so like this. So I'm going to write all of these in different forms. So please remember that all of these are the same. It doesn't matter where the negative applies. So for all of these, what would the reciprocal be? The reciprocal would be just simply swapping of the numerators and denominators, which would mean this would have been just 2 over 1, which really is just the number 2, because that's what 2 over 1 is. But for reciprocals, if our original number is negative, then our reciprocal is also going to be negative. And it comes from the fact that we want the multiplication of the two to be equal to 1. So that's why the reciprocal will actually be negative if the original one was negative. So reciprocals are going to be positive if the original fraction is positive. They're going to be negative if the original fraction is negative. All right, so that's one thing that I wanted to point out and get out of the way for negative reciprocals. So now what else can happen? Another thing that can happen is that sometimes what you are given is an actual whole number or an integer. So let's say if somebody gave you the number 12, and then they ask you, what is the reciprocal of 12? And sometimes students will say, well, there's no numerator and denominator here. Well, don't forget that any whole number or integer can be written as a fraction, which is simply just 12 over 1, which means that the reciprocal of this would have been just 1 over 12. And again, it boils down to if you multiply the original number by the reciprocal, you're going to have that equal to 1. Now, if the number is negative, so if we had instead, let's say negative 15, that doesn't change anything for us. We still can write a negative number over 1, which means that the reciprocal, so it becomes still negative, but now we swap the numerator and denominator. So that would have been the reciprocal of negative 15. What happens now next if you have mixed numbers? So that's a great example. So for instance, if you had 3 and 1/2, this one gives students sometimes headaches because when they're so used to doing just the swapping of numerators and denominators, they may mistakenly write something like this, where they just swap the actual fraction part of the mixed number. So this is incorrect. So what you have to do with these is you actually have to change them first to an improper fraction. Now, an improper fraction that you have is going to be, so you're going to multiply, so this is going to be 2 times 3 plus the 1, and that's going to give us 7 over 2. That is the same thing as 3 and 1/2. And now it's much easier to be able to take the reciprocal, which simply is 2 over 7. So for mixed numbers, please first change them to improper fractions. And only then, you should change it and find the reciprocal. Now, if you forgot about improper fractions or proper fractions, I'll put up a link up above so that you can watch that video. And that's really it in terms of these reciprocals. So you can go ahead and find yourself a few examples, okay? And now you should be comfortable with converting reciprocals. So it's just a swapping of numerators and denominators, okay? If the original number is negative, the reciprocal will be negative. And don't forget, for whole numbers and mixed numbers, you actually have to change it to an improper fraction first and then swap the numerators and denominators. All right, thanks for watching. See you in a future video.